Weather radar is one of the most powerful tools we have in the cockpit. But many weather penetrations happen not because the radar failed, but because it was misinterpreted. Before we discuss these 4 points, it is important to remember one fundamental principle. Weather radar is a weather avoidance tool, not a weather penetration tool. It should not be used to navigate through thunderstorms or penetrate convective weather. Keeping this principle in mind helps pilots interpret the radar display with the right operational mindset. In this video, we will discuss 4 important points about weather radar that every A320 pilot should know. These concepts are not specific to one radar type. Most airborne weather radars behave in a similar way. Let's start with the most important one. Radar tilt. Weather radar only shows what the radar beam is pointing at. If the tilt is set too high, the radar beam may pass above the storm. If the tilt is set too low, the radar beam may hit the ground, producing clutter. So the correct technique is continuous tilt scanning. Many pilots think they need to remember different tilt values for different ranges, but in practice, that is not necessary. A very practical technique used by many pilots is to use ground returns as a reference. Select an ND range of around 80 miles. Then slowly adjust the tilt downward until you begin to see ground returns at the far edge of the display. Now increase the tilt slightly until the ground returns just disappear. At this point, the radar beam is just touching the ground at the selected range. This means the radar is scanning the most useful part of the atmosphere ahead of the aircraft. Once this reference tilt is established, pilots can change the ND range to larger values, such as 160 miles, to observe weather further ahead. Using different ranges also helps build a better picture of the weather structure. At longer ranges, such as 80 or 160 miles, the radar helps detect large weather systems early, giving the crew more time to plan deviations. By continuously adjusting the tilt and using multiple ranges, the pilot is effectively scanning the weather both vertically and horizontally. This helps create a three-dimensional understanding of the weather ahead of the aircraft. Another important limitation of airborne weather radar is radar shadow, sometimes called a blind area. This occurs when a strong thunderstorm absorbs most of the radar energy. When the radar beam hits a very intense precipitation core, a large part of the radar energy is attenuated or absorbed by the storm. On the radar display, this may appear as an empty or dark area behind the storm. At first glance, this region may look like clear weather. But in reality, there may still be significant weather hidden behind the first cell. You can see the image on the screen, which illustrates how a hidden weather area may exist behind a strong thunderstorm. This helps visualize the potential threat that may not be immediately visible on the radar display, even though the area may appear clear. Next point is understanding radar gain. Gain controls the sensitivity of the radar receiver. In most normal operations, the radar is used in auto gain, which automatically adjusts the receiver sensitivity to present a reliable weather picture. However, it is useful for pilots to understand manual gain. If the gain is set too high, the radar becomes oversensitive and may show exaggerated or false weather returns. If the gain is set too low, weaker precipitation may disappear from the display, leading to an underestimation of weather intensity. Adjusting gain briefly can help pilots perform a comparative assessment of the weather. For example, a large red return may initially appear as one strong cell. When the gain is reduced, some parts may change to yellow or green, while the smaller core remains red. This helps pilots identify the stronger convective core within a larger precipitation area. Last point is to understand that weather radar does not detect clouds directly. It detects precipitation, such as rain, water droplets, or hail, which reflect radar energy back to the aircraft. This means some clouds may not produce any radar return, even though they may still affect the ride. For example, mid-level cumulus clouds may contain only small amounts of moisture and may not appear clearly on the radar display. However, these clouds can still produce turbulence or a bumpy ride. Similarly, developing convective clouds may produce very little precipitation in the early stages, so the radar picture may still appear relatively clear. We hope you are still watching the video and that you found these points useful. One very important takeaway is this. The primary purpose of weather radar is to help the crew build a big picture of the airspace ahead of the aircraft. By using different ranges and properly managing the radar, pilots can observe the overall weather environment, identify areas of convective activity, and understand how the weather is developing along the route. This allows the crew to plan deviations early, decide how much track change may be required, and make smoother and safer routing decisions. Most weather systems do not develop instantly within a few seconds. Even convective weather usually gives pilots sufficient time to observe the buildup on radar and plan accordingly. So the real value of weather radar is strategic awareness. Thank you for watching. And we will see you in the next video on A320 Tech.